Okay, that's all the notes I know. But I looked over at Dominique, this one phrase, and it's like I learned this years ago from Vassar Clemens. And if you're a mandolin picker or whatever instrument you play, there's always something you can learn from other instruments. And especially other instruments, you might find something that relates to your mandolin or whatever instrument you play. But I was playing that tune, and that was one of Vassar's signature tunes on the fiddle with Patty on the Turnpike, and he could seemingly solo 15 minutes and not repeat himself. And but we were playing one night, and he did this lick, so I just looked over at Dominique and I said, Vassar lick, and it doesn't really make musical sense to me, but if Vassar did it, it was okay. So, and I just bet he had never done that before. And that's how quick his mind is and how good he is on the mandolin that he did it right there. And that's what I love about the generation of music that's coming up. Man, there's so many great players, and I do interviews sometime, and I'm asked about who's your favorite young mandolin picker, and it's so hard for me to name one because there's like I could probably sit here and come up with a list of about 20 players that are so good now that it is amazing how far this instrument's going. But all instruments that way too. You know how the banjo players that are coming up now are so amazing, and the fiddlers and the mandolins, and so whenever I'm asked. Do you think bluegrass music, or bluegrass style music, not just bluegrass, but is in good hands? I'll say. I'll say it is.
Well, we've got some good teachers like this guy, that's for sure. How about the lineup this evening? It's a pretty good one for mandolin players, I would say. We got Doyle Lawson, David Grisman, Sam Bush, and Chris Thiele, all in a row.
I plan on playing a lot of fiddle. Some fiddle. What you got on your mind, Dominique? What do you feel like picking? Do you want to play a solo number? Is there something you've written that you'd like to? Well, okay, we'll keep playing. We'll keep playing.
Yes. So this fellow in the front row just asked Sam to do a little discussion about his rhythmic chop, and I would ask him the same question if I was in the audience.
I got one now. Don't race this horse for 3 weeks. Jethro Burns line, thank you. Rhythm chopping. I mean, for me, rhythm chopping, and those of you that are mandolin pickers, you know what we're talking about. If you, and I mean, I think as many things did start. I mean, the reason we all want to play one of these kinds of instruments, these kind of mandolins, with the points and the curls it's because Bill Monroe played one. For me it was, and Jethro Burns played one. And but when it comes to rhythm chopping, I believe that, to my knowledge, it did start with Bill Monroe. And if you listen to his older records, he really wasn't doing that until the probably late 50s, early 60s. And I've often wondered, when I was a kid, I certainly didn't get to touch his mandolin, but I did get to look at it, and it looked like the action was as high as a dobro. It was just incredibly high action. So I've often wondered if Bill Monroe started a mandolin shop because his action simply got too high to hold the strings down. But but the way Bill would chop, it was kind of especially in the early days of him chopping rhythm. And the reason I was talking about Bill first is that, to me, it comes from there. And it is really, so the difference when you're chopping an instrument and when you're not chopping. So here's what it would sound like if you were just playing rhythm and holding the strings down and not making this chop. And it's not that far removed from the way people play, F-hole jazz guitar that was already done before Bill started this. But if you're not chopping, you're just holding the strings down. But if you are chopping, you're trying to accent the backbeat to 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And this is pretty much a Bill Monroe style chop where, and every mandolin player has their own. And if you listen tonight, you'll see Doyle has a great chop. David Grisman certainly does. I've got mine, and Chris has his, and we all do it. It's all a little different. It's a matter of your personality. But the way Bill was doing it is kind of like the right hand was going all in motion, just like a rhythm guitar player. And then it's as if you're releasing the chord as you strike it with your right-handed pick. So you want to make enough of the sound that the people can tell what chords you're playing in. But, bluegrass, some people say that your mandolin is your snare drum. Well, that's all true until the mandolin player takes a solo and the banjo starts doing his chop. Nobody makes a better rhythm chop than Jerry Douglas on the dobro, or the way Darrell Anger can chop a fiddle on the backbeat. But it's all an attempt at, within the 5-piece configuration, you are making a rhythm section, and somebody usually is always playing a backbeat. In our case, Bill Monroe did it, so we get to do the most. And but really, it's just like, and some people only chop on the backbeat, or Bill Monroe would do kind of a whole guitarish strum. So now you know what I mean when I wondered, is his action just so high I can't press it down anymore? And then along the years and through playing in, the marching band in high school, I could never play a trap kit of drums. I could never do that. Wasn't that coordinated, but I did play the bass drum. Later graduating to snare drum in the marching band and studying, and so I had to study rudiments and how you do this. If only to play on one drum, I had to do that. And so I got decent enough that I could be in the marching band. And then years later, I got turned on to listening to certain drummers, the way they play, such as a guy named Carlton Barrett, who was the drummer in the Bob Marley and the Wailers, and then Stuart Copeland in the Police. And the way they played, it all made sense to me. It's like when I first heard, and by the way Bob Marley played rhythm guitar, when I first heard Bob Marley and the Wailers, it was amazing to me because the way my crazy brain works, it sounded like the way bluegrass mandolin players chop a mandolin on the backbeat. I mean, maybe a little differently, but the percussiveness and just the... So then I started paying attention to how the people would play the hi-hat, and I would try to make maybe some of my upstrokes the way you would alternate the hi-hat and the snare. So it's kind of like... And somewhere along the line, I developed a way to, in other words, it doesn't always fit with the same chords that Bill Monroe would have been doing in his bluegrass style chopping. I mean, you can do it, but I was looking for another way just to sort of make a little more staccato, and so started trying to figure out if there's a way I could dampen them with the sides of my fingers, and so to make that percussion sound. trying to look for a different way, but once again, I was influenced by different instruments than just a mandolin. So, and as you listen to, as Dominique was saying, all these mandolin pickers that are going to play tonight, we all have a different chop. And I know when I was a kid, I was the kid that would drive from Bowling Green up to Lexington, well, ride with friends up to Bowling Green, from Bowling Green to Lexington to hear J.D. Crowe, Doyle Lawson, Red Allen, and Bobby Sloan play. And of course, I wasn't old enough to get in, but they played at the Holiday Inn Red Slipper Lounge with the swinging saloon doors, so I literally would, stand there all night and listen to Doyle Lawson play the mandolin. And so glad Doyle's here today. Yeah. But as far as mandolin chopping, we all do it a little differently. And I mean, it really is a matter of your style and what have you. But the goal is to keep it in time. Because when I was first got out of high school and I was playing, it wasn't really far from here. We were playing some kind of barn dance. And the banjo picker that I played with, Courtney Johnson, came up to me and says, "You're out of time." I said, "No, I'm not." He said, "Well, it sounds like you are." And we really started thinking about this rhythm chop thing, and he just said, "Well, you're holding it down too long." And so I guess I was kind of letting it ring too long for the way he liked it. And so I tried to start making more of a backbeat thing that maybe I wasn't. But yeah, like he said, if it sounds like you're out of time, you are. Just got back from Telluride, Colorado a few days ago. And, I don't know about you, Dominique, but boy, does my mandolin like being back here.
Same with mine.
You go up to 10,000 feet, there's no humidity, and they just sort of, they go to odd places, your instruments do. And then they don't have as much low end in the instrument. It's like the thin air makes a thin sound, and oh, it's nice to be back.
Yeah, it's like they get to drink a big glass of water when they come down south.
Yeah, one time I was at Telluride, and this thing had just, the action got so low, I couldn't even hardly play it, and it was just, so I thought, oh, I'll just take it in the bathroom with me during the shower. That was the first part of the finish that came off this. Don't do that. But, and I think of this one as a Bill Monroe tune that Dominique suggested, and this, it's funny, you think of Bill Monroe as the harshness, the driving, the whatever, but really some of the greatest things he ever did were nice and slow and pretty, and so here's one, we'll dedicate this one to the dog. He and I recorded this years ago with just Del McCurry on the guitar. So, The Wayfaring Stranger. Yeah. don't tune all the time because we want to. We tune all the time because we have to. Questions? Thoughts? Yes, sir? Okay, question was, when you do octaves, do you use two strings, or do you kind of rake over three? Is that what you mean? The first person I ever saw do an octaves, and by octaves we mean is when you're playing. So I've got that one there, and then the great thing about a mandolin is you can reach the other octave right here. So it just sort of makes kind of a, I don't know, meatier sound, a little bit more of a bigger tone. So I tend to do it more with just the two-finger octaves. And the first person I was, even though I learned a lot of these octave things from Jethro Burns, watching Jethro play, the first person I ever saw do it was Roland White in the 60s. So, and I know that some, and you can also make them, there's an octave, but you got that G and this G. So some people might want to do it, and you have to deaden the string in between if you do it like this. But you can also go. I mean, I think it kind of depends on where you're at on the fingerboard and what you're, where do you like to do it? Do you like, do you do it with the long way, or?
On the strings next to each other like that, you know. And then sometimes you can like reach up and get the fifth down there on the lower string.
You can? Learn something every day.
I was telling that to you guys. Because I learned that from him.
Yeah, I know. Keen observation down front. Your tremolo being the that you changed your hand positions, and yes, I do. All you young pickers, don't do that. Mine came just out of the fact that on the way to the second Newgrass Revival show we were on the way to.
Caribou.
This was actually, no, it was way before the caribou. Caribou wasn't invented yet. No, we were in the mountains of North Carolina, and I was asleep in the back seat. We had a two-door 62 Buick, and our bass player got out and didn't know that I'd rolled around in my slumber and just kind of had the deliverance pose, if you remember that, and my hand was in the car door, and he didn't know it, so he shut the door, and it kind of smashed these three fingers, and so I just had to there's certain things I had to change, and so for some reason that's what seemed to develop, and it's not that unlike the way Doc Watson would brace his hand. If you ever noticed the way Doc would brace and kind of have one. When I was a kid growing up playing, I played like Bill Monroe, and I didn't brace it anywhere. It was just. But I just had to, something got chipped in there, and I had to change the way I held the pick and reconfigure the way I could hold the instrument that literally just didn't hurt. And so, yes, I've noticed that too. Because one time, I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere for a while, and then I ran into Jethro Burns, my hero, and I said, I'm not getting anywhere. Have you noticed me having any bad habits? Not a moment of hesitation. Yeah. He said, the strings are only this wide. Why does your hand go that far? Don't know, it just does. But, that made me think about that. But as far as the tremolo thing, if you notice, Dominick doesn't have to reconfigure his hand when he does tremolo.
I think maybe I should, though.
But I think nobody has prettier tremolo than old dog Grisman. And so watch his hand tonight if you want to see how to technically do it correctly. I think David's got the prettiest way to do that. Yes, sir.
Could you talk a little bit about your rhythmic triplets? Because I've been working on those for like 2 or 3 years, and I can nail them a majority of the time, but sometimes I can't. Is there something you're doing a little differently, or?
Rhythmic triplets. See, sometimes hillbilly people, they don't know what they're really doing. They don't know why, they just do it. Well, I mean, it really can be a matter of, in terms of anything that varies other than just, that. It's a subdivision of beats, and maybe it is because in trying to learn to play snare drum in the marching band, I'd be going da 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 1 2 3 1 2 3. So it's like a. I mean that's a simple triplet. But one thing that I think, I mean, any of that kind of stuff is fine and it's fun. But if it's not matching in with the rest of the band, it means nothing. And so it depends on the music and what you're doing. But I mean, I really think, and if you notice, within that division of that triplet, I'm still trying to spell out the backbeat. So I'm still trying to make it, you got to feel the beat. But it does come from, paying attention to drummers in that way. I hope that helped. Yes, sir, back by the camera.
How do you keep that thing in tune?
Well, how do we keep this thing in tune?
It'll never be in tune.
Yeah, I mean, machines or ear?
Well, I got just like Dominick, I got a tuner. Mine's just in my pocket right now. But what I find I have to do as far as keeping it in tune, John Duffy, great mandolin player, one time just told me I couldn't keep it in tune, and I was breaking strings all the time. So he comes to see me play, and as soon as we got done, he goes, "I know what your problem is." I said, "What's that?" He goes, "You play too hard." And he said, "Mandolin's only this big. There's only so much it'll take. You simply play too hard." I said, "Yeah, but I can't hear it. I'm a banjo player with a loud banjo." And he said, "Well, then they got to be more respectful of you."
They won't. They won't.
I know they don't, but keeping it in tune isn't always easy. I mean, I got certain little tricks I've learned over the years of. Have you ever been tuning on your instrument and you hear, especially if you're trying to come up and you hear something kind of like a little squeak happen, and then your string goes sharp, right? What's going on is that the wrappings are catching in the nut. Even if your nut is in incredible, perfect working order, a wrapped string can do that. So I have these theories. And the bottom line is, if I think it helps, it does. I mean, seriously. If you think it helps, it does. And not every time, but almost every time I change strings, I take a pencil and I put a little bit of graphite under the string in the nut slot. And that way, when I'm playing on stage and when the mandolin's out of tune, there's a 90-something% chance that the string has gone flat and not sharp. So I can make a quicker tune that way. So I found that to be helpful. But really, I mean, it's like we were just talking about. We're not upset. People actually did ask me once, "Are you obsessed with tuning?" No, I'm obsessed with being in tune. And it's just hard to keep double strings together. I mean, same reason now, I remember when I was a kid listening to Bill Monroe records and wondering, well, how come he's out of tune on that cut? Well, now I know, because sometimes that was the good take and you just happen to be a little out of tune, and that's the way it works. And because back then, you do, when I'm talking of the great Bill Monroe recordings, when he's recording in the 50s and the 40s, and the band just played. There was no separate tracks or digital ways to do things, and it was the luck of the draw, and the best take might have been the one that the mandolin was out of tune on, and you had to go with it. I think we've both been there, right? Yeah, and sometimes you don't even notice it so much till later on, and then you go, oh, okay, should have tuned up before that one. But it's these double strings. I mean, and I will go on record as saying that the bluegrass pickers get their mandolins more in tune than any other form of music. That I will go to the bank on. I can tell by your thunderous applause that you agree. But the most famous mandolin thing that's ever been played to me, you can go back and listen to it, and it's really not in tune that well, but it sounds great. And it made the song, and I'm talking about Maggie May by Rod Stewart. It's like this great sound that comes at the end of a great song, and sure, that mandolin is kind of far apart in its tuning, but actually met the guy by email that played it. Yeah, because I happened to say in an interview, oh, that has to be I don't care what you say, that people know that that's a mandolin, and that is the most widely heard mandolin solo that was ever played by a guy named David Jackson for Rod Stewart. So you can't always keep it in tune, but we sure try. Sir?
I had a question for Dominick. Just what, both musically, as a musician and as a mandolinist, what are some of those important things you picked up from Sam?
I would definitely say just his rhythmic sense and the chop is like, it's one of my favorite things in music, period. And I grew up listening to mostly bluegrass and folk music, old time stuff, and then moved out to Boston in 2008 to go to the Berklee College of Music. And when I got there, I was just exposed to so much other amazing music. And it's cool. It's like as I check out all this other weird stuff, I kind of appreciate bluegrass and where I came from even more. And to this day, Sam's just, yeah, he's the man. Anyway, but back to the question. Yeah, the rhythmic feel and the chop, and just the way he drives the melody when he's taking a solo and playing a lead. It's kind of like a fiddle, you know. It's like it's always like just on top of the beat where you like it. It just feels so good. So
I think that kind of comes from bluegrass too, where even when you are playing a solo, unlike some other forms of music, where the soloist is not responsible for keeping time, so to speak, in the world of a 5-piece or 6-piece bluegrass band, even as you play your lead, you're responsible for the timing too. And that's not something that we thought about as we're listening to and learning. It's just something that you love the sound of, and that's the way that, you know, Bill Monroe's 1946 band with Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs played, and the fiddle player too. And so some other, the way that maybe a saxophone is not responsible for the timing during their solo, it's not that way where we grew up. I must ask, so at Berklee, were you able to, was mandolin your instrument that you're able to feature?
Yeah, they're doing this American Roots Music program these days, and so I was actually able to attend college on the mandolin. I know it sounds funny. And they have a bunch of great teachers kind of from this world up there right now. Bruce Molsky teaches up there, and Daryl Anger, and the late great John McGann. I was fortunate enough to get to take lessons with for a couple semesters, and he was really great. And so that they really have like the folk music and bluegrass and old time thing going on, but then of course there's whatever you want to get into up there. So I was really fortunate to hang in that scene for a while and get to soak up a lot of those different elements and try to apply them to the mandolin.
And is like composition part of your routine? Would you study composition and theory, or how did all that work with the mandolin?
I guess I didn't study too much composition. When I got there, I was pretty much just like a bluegrass picker, you know. So my skills with written notation were very poor, and so I kind of had to start in square one for that stuff. But I think it was really good for me to just get like the basic fundamentals down of music theory, you know, intervals and chords and harmony and stuff. And so, yeah, that's. I only went there for 2 years, and so I kind of learned the basics of that stuff, and got to take a few really interesting out there classes as well, like South Indian rhythmic solfege was one of my favorites. It's all like the takadimi takata stuff that you hear on Shakti records.
Can you speak that language?
A little bit. I know like the basics. Like 3 is takita 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 takita, and then 4 takadimi 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 takadimi. 5 tadinganatum 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 takita 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 takadimi takita takadimi takita takadimi takita takadimi takajuno takadimi takajuno takadimi takita. Anyways.
Sounds like 2 years at Berklee School of Music is kind of like 5 years of the 11th grade from a guy from Bowling Green. I'm sorry? Would it did exist? I just what do you mean if it existed?
Well, see,
I was born in the 50s. It existed. Actually, when I was a kid, I read Downbeat magazine, and I thought about doing that. But all of a sudden, I got an offer to move to Louisville and play 6 nights a week in a bluegrass band, and so that was my college. Going to swatting it out over one mic 6 nights a week.
And you don't have to go to college to learn that stuff. I mean, I know that Sam was checking out Shakti records, and all that stuff is out there if you just seek it out, and get into it in the 11th grade while you're sitting in math class,
Did you ever get caught when you're in high school and you're just sitting there thinking about music and they call on you?
Oh yeah.
And you look like a dog staring at a ceiling fan because you have no idea what's being said. Because for me, I'm thinking about a fiddle tune and wondering, if I had the right notes, and can't wait to get home to see if you got it right. Yeah.
So yeah, doing this thing,
Yeah, I know Mr. Dole in American History thought he had that little idiot boy sitting right in the front there. Every time. Huh?
Yeah, one time, I think it was about 11th grade actually, that was when my mom started letting me take the car down to Boulder to go to the jam sessions, and this was like a big deal, but the rule was I couldn't be late for school the next morning, and if I was, she would take the car for a week. And so, I would go to the jam session and always make it back on time, but, we would be up late picking. And so I would come to school the next day, just kind of like you're wearing the same clothes, and just like barely hanging on. And one time in math class, actually, I was, sitting there kind of dozing off, probably thinking about a fiddle tune or something, and I got called on to go up to the front of the class to work out a problem on the board. And they say math and music come hand in hand, but I was never really too good at math, and so I kind of just like stumbled up there to the front, and took one look at that thing, and I was like, man, I don't know how to do this one. I'm just gonna go sit back down. So he caught me red-handed, but that's all good,
And that's when you need a smart girlfriend.
That's right.
We got time for one more question, then we're gonna have to.
Could you either play bluegrass stomp or bluegrass twist? Either one.
Bluegrass, I'm pretty well versed in that stuff, but bluegrass twist, I don't know. I do know bluegrass stomp, so.
Hey, Sam.
Do the stomp.
Sam,
We'll do the stomp, you guys do the
would you
twist.
recommend a good CD of yours that will help us get the basics down and clean up our licks?
I'm sorry,
Can you give us one? I see you have some lesson CDs out. Which one would you recommend for us to really get some finger exercises and clean up our licks a little bit?
Well, I've been making, tapes back when it was it's still called
That's
homespun
why I asked
tapes.
you which one you recommend.
So I've been doing one of the, I mean, really the first one I ever did in 1976, it was just, it's basic bluegrass mandolin. But one thing I talk about is that as I would go around and meet other mandolin pickers and bluegrass people, and we were all just beginning and trying to figure out how to do this, is that, and maybe it's because I grew up listening to a jazz guitar player play mandolin instead, that, I mean, just literally the idea of just learning your scales and playing your scales in different positions can be really helpful as you're starting, because you'll notice that, and that this too comes from Bill Monroe, the way you play certain solos, you're sort of playing within a position of a chord. It's all within that chord. All right, as far as learning scales, and then okay, so then you learn that scale, maybe starting with your second finger on the 5th fret, and which throws you in an odd thing. But what it does is educate you more about your own fingerboard, which is the same as. And then another version of that is to go up to what violin players would call 3rd position and start on the 5th fret. And this is really good. And another thing about your scales is it can get you used to using all 4 of your fingers, because it can be easy to ignore the little ones sometimes. And not only that, it can help you learn to make your pick go back and forth, which as a mandolin player, that's one of your more important features. And trying to learn to make your upstroke the same volume as your downstroke. And once you get used to it, of course, it's like second nature. But when you're first doing it seems so foreign, because you're going to start with all downs. And then as you go a little further, then you learn to go back and forth. And so the idea is that you don't hear a different volume with your upstrokes or your down. So that's, one thing you can do. But I mean, it is amazing. A lot of bluegrass players didn't start and didn't know about scales and things, and that's pretty much if you bought a Mill Bay book right off the bat, that's what it would teach you. So that's what I was going through I think it's just called like a basic bluegrass deal. But Mike Marshall's also got some great technique things. And actually, I was holed up in a hotel about a year ago, and I had the Mike Marshall DVD with me working on technique. So, if you ever stop trying, you probably are. I mean, you got to keep trying. I don't know. What do you think? I'm still trying. All right. So this is like another side of the coin.
That's Sam Bush, ladies and gentlemen.
Dominick Leslie.